Welcome back to Lucid Science. Today, we're talking about how our creation of roads and pollutants can alter the balance of freshwater ecosystems in landscape ecotoxicology of Coho salmon spawner mortality in urban streams by Feist et al. As always, let's go over some terms. Anadromous refers to fish that are born in freshwater, spend most of their lives in saltwater, and then return to freshwater to spawn, such as salmon and some species of sturgeon. Fry are salmon in the middle of their life cycle, and their abundance and survival in streams is dependent upon temperature, predation, pollution, and competition for food. As a result, they're a good indicator of stream health. Impervious surfaces are human-created materials such as concrete and asphalt that allow little to no stormwater filtration into the ground beneath that would otherwise have been contained in natural forests or meadows. Alright, I think we're ready, so let's get into it. In recent decades, human population growth and development have continued to increase along the coastal margins of North America. Related changes in land cover and human land use have elevated land-based resources of pollution and toxic stormwater runoff in particular to become one of the most important threats to the biological integrity of basins, lakes, estuaries, and nearshore marine environments. For toxic runoff, however, the connections between unsustainable practices on land and the decline of ecological resilience in aquatic habitats remains poorly understood, which is why this study is so important. In Western North America, anadromous salmon typically migrate thousands of kilometers in their lifetimes. They hatch and grow in freshwater, migrate to the sea to capitalize on the productivity of the oceans, to grow rapidly and reach sexual maturity, and then return to their original streams to spawn and die. Various human activities, such as recreational and commercial fishing, stream dewatering, and the placement of migration barriers like dams, can increase salmon spawner mortality. In general, however, salmon death has not been attributed to toxic chemical contaminants in stormwater runoff. The exception is a recently documented phenomenon of returning adult coho salmon dying at high rates in urban and urbanized streams in the lowland Puget Sound region. Coho return to small coastal stream networks to spawn each fall, triggered by early autumn rainfall and rising stream flows. Affected coho from several different urban basins showed a similar progression of symptoms leading up to death, including disorientation, lethargy, loss of equilibrium, mouth gaping, and fin splaying. Adult mortality rates in urban streams are consistently high relative to spawning coho salmon in more pristine areas, ranging from about 25% to 90% of total fall runs, and mortality rates of this magnitude likely have negative consequences for maintaining viable coho populations. These findings, together with the rapid onset of the syndrome, the nature of the symptoms, and the consistent reoccurrence within and between urban basins over many years, point to toxic stormwater runoff from urban landscapes as the likely cause of coho spawner mortality. Urban streams are receiving waters containing pesticides, metals, petroleum, and many other potentially toxic chemicals. Vehicles deposit many compounds on road surfaces through exhaust emissions, leaking fluids, and the wearing of tires and brake pads and other friction materials. Collectively, these contaminants accumulate on streets and other impervious surfaces until they are mobilized by rainfall and transported to aquatic habitats via storm runoff. This adult die-off phenomenon has been observed in all Seattle area urban streams where coho salmon occur, so let's look at the results to understand it a little better. In Figure 1, we see the study sites that varied across an array of urban densities in order to understand the effect of urbanization on salmon health. They found strong associations between how the land is used and land cover materials with rates of coho spawner deaths. Three variables were particularly important for predicting mortality: impervious surfaces, local roads, and commercial property type, which can be seen in Figure 2. There is an obvious correlation here, as mortality increased with the increased prevalence of impervious surfaces, commercial surfaces, and local roads. Their findings support the hypothesis that coho are being killed by toxic chemical contaminants that originate from these types of surfaces and are transported to salmon spawning habitats via stormwater runoff. This can be best seen in Figure 3, where green areas are low mortality, yellow moderate, and red high mortality, which correlates perfectly with urban and industrialized areas around Seattle. Importantly, their study suggests that suitable spawning and rearing habitat may not be supportive of coho salmon survival when the surrounding landscape is urbanized, especially for adult coho salmon. Their findings have two near-term applications. First, they identify likely hotspots for coho spawner mortality throughout central Puget Sound. Second, they indicate areas where toxic runoff could potentially undermine stream restoration efforts, specifically strategies that improve physical and biological habitat conditions. The potential influence of rainfall, including timing, frequency, and individual storm intensity, remains an area of active investigation. For example, salmon that arrive and enter a stream during a period without much rainfall often survive, and then become symptomatic and die when it next rains. Over the longer term, an approach similar to the one developed here could be used to forecast the likely impacts of future human population growth and development on Puget Sound coho populations that are currently healthy. This, in turn, would inform strategies to reduce or mitigate toxic runoff in healthy and productive basins in advance of expanding roads and other impervious surfaces. Climate change is expected to shift regional rainfall patterns, and it should be possible to explore how this will interact with changing land cover to influence stormwater quality and toxic runoff to coho spawner habitats. And that's how increased urbanization and human infrastructure are affecting the health of coho salmon populations around the Puget Sound. Mitigation efforts are happening all around Seattle, but more has to be done in order to save and restore salmon populations to their former glory. Find us on social media at Conservation Made Simple, and I'll see you on the next Lucid Science.